Stop scrolling. This is not just a story, it's a moment that changed a legend. What happens when a man who conquered the world is suddenly taken back to where it all began? By one unexpected knock on his door. Wait, this is where everything changed. Not on a basketball court, not under bright lights, not with a crowd screaming his name, but in silence. It was late evening in Charlotte, North Carolina. The kind of night where the world feels paused, no noise, no pressure, no expectations. The city outside Michael Jordan's home was calm, but inside, something unseen was about to happen. Michael Jordan, the man the world called the greatest of all time, sat alone. No suit, no cameras, no spotlight, just a quiet room, soft lighting, and the faint glow of a television replaying old NBA games. Highlights he had seen 1,000 times, game-winning shots, championship celebrations, crowds chanting his name like a prayer. But tonight, none of it mattered, because for the first time in a long while, Michael Jordan wasn't thinking about basketball. He was thinking about time, about how fast it moved, about how much it took with it. About the people who disappeared along the way, and then, knock, knock, not loud, not aggressive, just 2 soft taps against the door. Michael frowned slightly. Who could that be this late? Another knock followed. Same rhythm, same sound, and suddenly something strange happened. His heart tightened, not fear, not anger, recognition, a feeling he couldn't explain. Michael stood up slowly. Every step toward the door felt heavier than it should have. His instincts, the same instincts that carried him through pressure-packed finals, were whispering something. This is different. He reached for the handle and paused for just 1 second. Because sometimes the smallest moments carry the biggest memories. He opened the door, and time stopped. Standing there was a man in worn clothes, shoulders slightly slouched, hair touched heavily by gray. His face carried years, not the kind that come from success, but the kind that come from survival. The man looked nervous, uncomfortable, like he didn't belong. Their eyes met, and Michael Jordan's breath caught in his throat. Because he wasn't looking at a stranger. He was looking at his childhood. "Mike," the man said quietly. That was all it took. That single word shattered decades. Michael didn't respond immediately. His mind raced backward past championships, past endorsements, past fame, straight into dusty streets, cracked courts, and summer nights filled with laughter and dreams. "No way," Michael whispered. The man shifted his weight, clearly unsure. "I almost didn't come," he said. "I know it's late. Michael stepped closer, stared harder, the eyes, the voice, the posture. It was him. The kid who played ball with him until their hands were raw. The boy who shared lunches when money was tight. The friend who believed in him before the world did. "You're really here," Michael said softly. The man nodded. "Yeah, it's me." And in that moment, the greatest competitor the world had ever known felt something he hadn't felt in years. Vulnerability. The world saw Michael Jordan as untouchable, unbreakable, larger than life. But right now, he was just a man standing face to face with someone who knew him before the legend, before the Nike deals, before the trophies, before the name meant everything. Michael swallowed hard. "How did you find me?" he asked. The man smiled faintly. "You don't forget where your brother lives." Brother. That word hit harder than any defender ever had. Michael stepped aside. "Come in," he said as the door closed behind them. Something else closed too. The distance of 30 years. Inside, the house was quiet, elegant, but warm. Framed jerseys lined the walls. Trophies rested behind glass, a lifetime of achievements on display. The man stopped and looked around. He shook his head slowly. "Man, you really did it," he said. Michael watched him carefully, not with pride, but with something closer to guilt. Because success doesn't just lift you up. Sometimes it pulls you away. They sat down. Silence filled the room again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was heavy. "I didn't come for anything," the man said quickly, almost defensively. "I swear, I was passing through town and I kept thinking, what if I never see you again?" Michael leaned forward. "You don't ever have to explain yourself to me," he said firmly. The man exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath for years. "I didn't know if you'd remember me," he admitted. "You live in a different world now." Michael looked him straight in the eyes. "I remember everything," he said, "especially where I came from." And right there, before any stories were shared, before any memories were spoken, Michael Jordan understood something powerful. This knock wasn't an accident. It wasn't coincidence. It was a reminder that before he conquered the world, before the world knew his name, there were people who believed in him when belief was all they had, and one of them was sitting right in front of him. The man reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something small, old, worn, a faded photograph. Two kids, barely teenagers, standing on a broken basketball court, arms around each other, smiling like the future belonged to them. Michael took the photo with trembling hands. He laughed quietly, then his eyes filled with tears. "I can't believe you kept this," he said. The man smiled. "Some things are too important to lose." Michael Jordan looked down at the picture again. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about winning. He was thinking about who he used to be, and that was only the beginning. Before the world knew his name, someone else did. Long before arenas shook with cheers, long before sneakers carried his signature, long before the word GOAT was ever whispered, Michael Jordan was just a kid. A skinny kid with scuffed shoes, a crooked jump shot, and a dream that felt too big for the neighborhood he came from. Wilmington, North Carolina. That's where it all started. No luxury, no shortcuts, just cracked sidewalks, open courts, and long summer days that never seemed to end. And right there every single day was his childhood friend. Not a teammate chasing fame, not a rival, a brother in spirit. They met young, too young to know what the future held. All they knew was basketball and each other. Every morning, one of them would shout from the street, "You coming out or what?" And they'd play until their hands burned, until the sun disappeared, until the streetlights flickered on. No refs, no rules, just heart. This wasn't about winning games. This was about surviving dreams. Michael wasn't the best kid on the court back then. That surprises people. He missed shots, he got blocked, he lost games, but what separated him was obsession, and his friend saw it first. When others went home, Michael stayed. When others quit, Michael asked for one more game. And his friend stayed too, not because he had to, because belief is contagious. They talked about the future like it was guaranteed. "One day, we'll make it out of here," Michael would say. His friend would laugh. "Yeah? And when you do, don't forget me." Michael would grin. "Never." Those words mattered back then, because back then, they were equal. No fame between them, no difference in dreams. Just two kids standing at the same starting line. Life at home wasn't easy for Michael. Money was tight. Pressure was real. Every mistake felt expensive. Basketball wasn't a hobby, it was hope. And when Michael struggled, when doubt crept in, it was his friend who pulled him back. Then came the moment that almost broke him. High school tryouts. Michael Jordan didn't make the varsity team. Cut, sent home, crushed. That night, he didn't talk much. He just sat on the curb, staring at the ground, replaying every missed shot in his head. That's when his friend sat beside him. No speeches, no lectures, just one sentence. They didn't say you weren't good. They just said not yet. That sentence stayed with Michael forever, because sometimes belief from one person is stronger than rejection from many. The next morning, Michael was back on the court. Earlier, angrier, hungrier, and his friend was there again, rebounding, encouraging, pushing. They didn't know it then, but they were building something bigger than basketball. They were building identity. As years passed, things started to change. Michael grew taller, faster, sharper. Scouts began to appear. People whispered his name. Teachers talked. Coaches watched. Opportunity was knocking. But opportunity doesn't knock on everyone's door the same way. This is where life started choosing favorites. College offers followed. Michael got attention. His friend got responsibility, family needs, bills, reality. They still played ball, but the conversations changed. Michael talked about practice schedules and travel. His friend talked about work shifts and helping at home. No jealousy, just distance, unspoken distance. The night Michael told him he was leaving for college, the air felt heavy. They sat on the same old court, same cracked ground, same rusted hoop, different futures. "You're really going?" his friend said. Michael nodded. "I have to." His friend smiled, but his eyes told another story. "Then go," he said. "Do it for both of us." They shook hands, then hugged longer than usual. Because deep down, they both knew something was ending. Some goodbyes don't sound sad, but they hurt the most. At college, Michael's life exploded. Games, crowds, pressure, and then the NBA. The dream became reality. But with every step forward, the past grew quieter. Calls became rare. Letters stopped. Not because Michael didn't care, because life got loud. Schedules filled. Expectations grew. The world demanded everything. Meanwhile, his friend stayed behind, working jobs, facing setbacks, watching the dream unfold from a distance. Every night, he saw Michael on TV, jumping higher, winning bigger, becoming someone untouchable. And he smiled, because pride lived where jealousy never did. But life isn't kind to everyone. While Michael rose, his friend struggled. Bad luck, missed chances, one wrong decision that led to another. Nothing dramatic, just real life, and slowly, quietly, he became invisible, not to Michael's heart, but to Michael's world. Success doesn't erase the past, it just moves faster than it. Years passed. Decades, Michael Jordan became a symbol, a brand, a legend, a name bigger than basketball. And somewhere far away, a man carried memories no one else remembered. Memories of the kid before the crown, before the trophies, before the world told him who he was. That's what made the knock at the door so powerful, because when Michael saw his friend again, he wasn't seeing failure, he was seeing foundation. The reminder that every legend starts as a kid with someone who believes in them, and that belief never fades. This is where life took a turn no one could control. Every great story has a moment when everything changes, not with noise, not with drama, but quietly. This was that moment. After high school, the world opened its doors for Michael Jordan, and slowly, quietly, it closed them for someone else. At first, nothing felt different. Michael still came back home. They still met on the old court. They still talked like nothing had changed. But change doesn't announce itself, it sneaks in. Distance doesn't start with miles, it starts with moments you miss. Michael's schedule filled fast. College practices, team meetings, travel games. When he called home, conversations were rushed. "Practice is crazy. Coach is pushing us hard. I'll explain next time." And there was always a next time. Meanwhile, his childhood friend's life moved in the opposite direction. While Michael packed gym bags, his friend packed lunch for work. While Michael traveled to new cities, his friend stayed in the same neighborhood. While Michael chased the future, his friend handled the present. No anger, no resentment, just reality. Life doesn't pull people apart with force, it pulls them apart with responsibility. Then came the NBA draft. Michael Jordan's name was called. The moment they once joked about, now real. Cameras flashed, crowds cheered, and miles away, a man sat in front of a small television, smiling alone. He did it. He whispered. Not "I wish that were me," not "why not me," just pride. But pride doesn't pay bills, and life doesn't pause to celebrate someone else's success. As Michael's career took off, his friends' struggles deepened. Work became unstable, money stayed tight, family needs increased. One problem led to another, not crimes, not scandals, just survival. Some lives fall apart loudly, others fall apart silently. Michael tried to keep in touch. At first, a call here, a message there, but the higher he rose, the harder it became to stay grounded. The world demanded him, fans wanted him, sponsors needed him, teammates relied on him, and somewhere in all that noise, a friendship faded, not out of choice, out of exhaustion. Sometimes you don't lose people, you lose time. Years passed. Michael Jordan became unstoppable, game winners, championships, worldwide fame. His face everywhere, his name everywhere. But success has a side no one talks about. Loneliness, not physical, emotional. Because when you're at the top, people see the crown, not the person. Meanwhile, his childhood friend watched from afar. Through TV screens, through newspaper headlines, through memories, he remembered the kid who missed shots, the kid who got cut, the kid who cried once but came back stronger. That kid was now a legend. And legends don't come back, or so he thought. Fame builds walls faster than it builds bridges. At one point, the friend tried reaching out, a letter, short, simple, hope you're good, proud of you. No reply. Not because Michael ignored it, because it never reached him. That's how distance works. It doesn't need drama, just time. Life hit harder after that. A job lost, a bad investment, health problems. Each setback chipped away at confidence, at identity, at hope. Failure doesn't hurt the most, being forgotten does. Still, he never spoke badly of Michael, not once. When people asked you knew him, he'd smile and say, yeah, good guy, always was. Because real loyalty doesn't disappear when life gets hard. Decades passed. Michael retired, returned, retired again. The world celebrated his greatness, but somewhere inside him, something was missing. He couldn't name it. He just felt it. At night, when things got quiet, memories returned. The old court, the shared dreams, the promise, I'll never forget you. And then came the realization, he hadn't forgotten. He'd just lost the way back. Success doesn't erase guilt, it delays it. For his childhood friend, things reached a breaking point. He didn't want help, didn't want pity. He just wanted closure. One last chance to be seen, not as a failure, but as someone who mattered once. So he made a decision, a hard one. He found an address, not through connections, not through fame, through memory, and he drove, hours alone, rehearsing what he'd say. Maybe he won't open the door. Maybe he won't recognize me. Maybe I'll just turn around, but he didn't. Because some bonds don't break. They just wait. Courage isn't knocking loudly. It's knocking anyway. That's how two paths separated by time, success, and struggle finally crossed again. Not on a stage, not in public, but at a front door. With one simple knock, and when Michael opened that door, he wasn't seeing a man who fell behind. He was seeing the friend who stood beside him before the world ever did. And in that moment, everything that split began to come back together. This wasn't a reunion. This was a reckoning. Michael Jordan stood frozen in his doorway, not because he didn't recognize the man, but because he recognized everything. The voice, the posture, the way the man avoided eye contact for just a second, the same way he used to after missing an easy shot. Time had aged his face, but it hadn't erased him. This wasn't a stranger. This was the past. Standing right in front of him, "Man," Michael said quietly, his voice lower than usual, "I thought I'd never see you again." The man forced a small smile. "Yeah," he replied, "life's funny like that." They stood there for a moment longer than necessary. Two men, 2 lifetimes apart, one memory connecting them. Some moments don't rush you. They wait for you to catch up. Michael stepped back and opened the door wider. "Come in," he said, "please." The man hesitated. Just for a second, as if he wasn't sure he belonged inside this world. Then he walked in. The door closed behind them with a soft click. And just like that, 30 years of distance were sealed inside one quiet room. The house was beautiful, clean lines, warm lighting, calm and controlled. It didn't scream luxury, it whispered it. The man looked around slowly. Framed jerseys, trophies behind glass, photographs frozen in time. History on every wall. He let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. "Man," he said, "you really lived the dream." Michael didn't smile, because suddenly the dream felt heavy. "Sit," Michael said, motioning to the couch. They sat opposite each other, at first polite, cautious, unsure, like two men meeting for the first time, but that didn't last, because history has gravity and it pulls people back together. "So," Michael finally said, breaking the silence, "How long you been in town?" The man shrugged. "Couple days. You could have called." The man looked down at his hands. "I didn't know if I should." That sentence said everything. Sometimes the hardest door to knock on is the one you feel you don't deserve to open. Michael leaned forward. "You never have to feel like that with me," he said. The man nodded, but the doubt didn't disappear, because years of struggle don't vanish with one sentence. Michael stood up and walked to the kitchen. "You want something?" he asked. "Water, coffee." "Water's fine." Michael handed him a glass and sat back down. Their knees almost touched, close now, familiar. "So," Michael said again, softer this time, "tell me about you." The man hesitated. He wasn't ready to tell the full story, not yet. Same old stuff. He said lightly, "Work, life, you know." Michael knew that tone. The "don't look too close" tone, the same one he used himself when people asked questions he didn't want to answer. "You don't have to sugarcoat it," Michael said. "It's just me." The man took a sip of water, then another, then he sighed. "Life didn't go the way we thought," he admitted. Michael nodded. Neither did his, not the way people imagined, but his disappointments were private. This man's were visible. "I saw you everywhere," the man continued. "TV, billboards, magazines. Every time I turned around, there you were." Michael waited. "I was proud," the man said quickly. "Still am." Michael believed him. "But pride doesn't cancel pain. There were times I wanted to reach out," the man said. "A lot of times, but I kept thinking, what would I even say?" Michael swallowed. "Say anything," he replied. "That you're still here." Silence again. But this silence was different. It wasn't awkward. It was honest. Silence between strangers is empty. Silence between old friends is full. The man glanced at the trophies again. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked. "The game," Michael smiled faintly. "Sometimes," he said, "but not the way people think." "What do you miss then?" Michael didn't answer right away. "I miss the simplicity," he finally said, "when all I cared about was the next shot, when life wasn't watching." The man nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said, "I miss that too." They both knew what he meant. Not basketball, youth, possibility. Michael stood up again and walked to a shelf. He reached behind a photo frame and pulled something out. An old basketball, cracked leather, faded lines. The man's eyes widened. "No way," he said. "You still have that." Michael tossed it lightly in the air, hard to get rid of where it all started. The man laughed a real laugh for the first time. And just like that, they were kids again, talking over each other, finishing each other's sentences, arguing about who hit the last shot. Some memories don't age, they wait. But the night wasn't just about memories. It was about truth. The man's laughter faded. "I gotta say something," he said quietly. Michael listened. "I almost didn't knock," the man admitted. "I sat in my car for like 20 minutes. Why? Because I didn't want to be the guy who reminds you of what you escaped." That hit Michael hard. He stood up, walked over, sat beside him. "Listen to me," Michael said firmly. "I didn't escape you. I carried you with me." The man's eyes filled with tears. "You don't know how much that means," he whispered. Michael put a hand on his shoulder. "You mattered then," he said. "You matter now. Greatness isn't proven by what you achieve. It's proven by who you don't forget." They talked until late, about everything they never said, about everything they assumed, about everything they survived. And as the night stretched on, something changed. The distance dissolved. The weight lifted. The door that once separated two lives became a bridge. Because sometimes the most powerful moments don't happen in arenas. They happen quietly, behind closed doors, with no audience at all. And for Michael Jordan, this moment, standing face to face with the man who knew him before the world did, would become one of the most meaningful victories of his life. This night wasn't planned, but it was necessary. The clock on the wall quietly ticked past midnight. Neither of them noticed, because when two lives reconnect after decades, time becomes irrelevant. Michael Jordan leaned back on the couch, holding the old basketball in his hands. He rolled it slowly between his palms, feeling every crack, every worn line, as if touching it could bring back everything it once meant. This ball, he said softly, saw more dreams than most people ever will. His childhood friend smiled. And more missed shots, he replied. They both laughed, not a loud laugh, not forced, the kind that comes from relief. Sometimes laughter isn't joy, it's release. Michael stood up and dimmed the lights slightly. The room felt warmer now, safer, like a space that belonged to memory rather than reality. "You hungry?" Michael asked, always. The man said jokingly. Michael disappeared into the kitchen and came back with simple food. Nothing fancy, no 5-star presentation, just normal, and somehow, that mattered more. They ate slowly, talking between bites, about old coaches, about neighborhood legends, about games no one else remembered. "You remember that summer tournament?" the man asked, "the one where the rim was bent?" Michael laughed. "Man, I thought that was just me missing shots." "You missed plenty," his friend said, "but you still took the last one." Michael paused. "That's something you taught me," he said. "Never pass the moment." The man shook his head. "Nah, you always had that." But deep down, both knew belief grows stronger when shared. Confidence isn't born alone. It's built in company. They moved to the living room floor, sitting cross-legged like kids again. The trophies around them felt distant now, like props in someone else's story. "Do you ever think about how close we were to giving up?" the man asked. Michael nodded. "All the time." They talked about nights when quitting felt easier than dreaming, times when failure looked permanent, times when belief was fragile. "I remember after you got cut," the man said quietly. "You didn't say a word for hours." Michael looked down. "I went home and cried," he admitted. "Didn't tell anyone that." The man smiled gently. "You didn't have to. Real strength isn't pretending you're never broken. It's choosing to rebuild." Silence settled again, but this time it was comfortable. Michael reached for an old photo album from a shelf. "I don't show this to many people," he said. The man leaned closer. Inside were faded photos, 2 boys on bikes, 2 boys in oversized jerseys, 2 boys smiling like the world hadn't touched them yet. "Man," the friend whispered, "I forgot about these." Michael shook his head. "I didn't." They flipped through each page slowly, naming moments, places, feelings. "That was the day we skipped school." The man laughed. "And got caught." Michael replied, "Worth it. Memories don't fade. They wait for permission to return." The man's smile softened. "You know," he said, "people think your life was perfect." Michael looked at him. "It wasn't." "I know," the man replied, "but they don't." Michael sighed. "There were nights I felt completely alone," he admitted, "surrounded by people, but alone." That surprised the man. "But everyone wanted something from you," he said. "How could you be alone?" Michael looked him straight in the eyes. "Because no one wanted me. They wanted what I represented." The man nodded slowly. "That's why this feels different," he said. Michael understood, because this wasn't about fame. This was about history. The rarest thing in success is someone who knew you before it. The conversation grew deeper, harder. The man finally spoke about his struggles, the jobs that didn't last, the decisions that haunted him, the nights when hope felt like a joke. "I kept thinking," he said, voice low, "if I just worked harder, things would turn around." Michael listened without interrupting. "But sometimes," the man continued, "hard work isn't enough." Michael nodded. "That doesn't make you weak," he said. "It makes you human." The man looked away, embarrassed by the tears forming. He said, "It makes you human." The man looked away, embarrassed by the tears forming. "I didn't want you to see me like this," he said. Michael leaned forward. "I needed to," he replied. "True friendship doesn't need success. It survives honesty." They talked about forgiveness of others and of themselves, about how easy it is to blame life, about how hard it is to accept it. Michael shared regrets too. Times he pushed people away, moments he chose winning over connection. "You don't get everything right," he said, "even when you win." The man smiled sadly. "I guess none of us do." As the night grew quieter, Exhaustion set in. But neither wanted it to end, because this wasn't just a visit. It was closure, healing, reconnection. Michael stood up and stretched. "You can stay here tonight," he said casually. "Guest room's ready." The man looked surprised. "You sure?" Michael didn't hesitate, of course. Hospitality is love without speeches. They stood in the hallway. Before heading to the room, the man stopped. "Mike," he said, "thank you." "For what?" "For opening the door." Michael smiled. "You were never locked out," he said. "We just lost the key." That night, as Michael lay in bed, sleep didn't come easily, not because of stress, but because his heart felt full and heavy. Full of gratitude, heavy with reflection. He realized something profound. All the championships, all the accolades, all the applause, none of it mattered as much as this. One night, one friend, one reminder of who he truly was. And somewhere down the hall, his childhood friend slept peacefully, maybe for the first time in years. Because sometimes, healing doesn't come from fixing the future. It comes from honoring the past. This was the moment everything shifted, not because of words spoken loudly, but because of one truth spoken quietly. Morning light slipped through the curtains, soft, gentle, unrushed. Michael Jordan woke up before his alarm, a habit he never lost. For years, mornings meant practice, preparation, pressure. Today felt different. For the first time in decades, there was no schedule waiting for him, just someone down the hall, someone from a life he thought was gone. Michael stood up, washed his face, and headed to the kitchen. He brewed coffee the old way, slow, careful, not rushed, not distracted. When his childhood friend walked in, rubbing his eyes, Michael looked up and smiled. "Morning," he said. The man nodded. "Morning, man." That pause said everything. Some mornings don't start conversations, they finish them. They sat at the table quietly, sipping coffee. No jokes, no nostalgia, just stillness. The man stared into his cup longer than necessary. Michael noticed. "You okay?" he asked. The man nodded too quickly. Yeah, I'm good." Michael leaned back. "That usually means you're not." The man smiled weakly. "You always could read me." Michael didn't respond. He waited, because some confessions don't need pushing, they need patience. The man took a deep breath. "There's something I didn't tell you last night," he said. Michael's posture changed instantly. "Okay," he replied. "I'm listening." The man stared at the table. "I didn't just come here because I was in town." Michael remained silent. "I came because I hit bottom." That word landed heavy. Bottom? Rock bottom doesn't announce itself. It whispers when hope runs out. "I lost my last job," the man continued. "Bills piled up, health's not great, and I realized I didn't have anyone left to call." His voice cracked. "I didn't want money, I didn't want favors, I just needed to know I wasn't invisible." Michael closed his eyes briefly, not because he was overwhelmed, but because he was ashamed. Ashamed of how life had carried him so far ahead, that he hadn't seen this coming. The man finally looked up. "I almost didn't come," he admitted. "I sat in my car and thought, what if he sees me as a reminder of everything that went wrong?" Michael stood up slowly, walked around the table, pulled out a chair beside him, and sat close. "You need to hear something," Michael said calmly. The man nodded. "I didn't succeed instead of you," Michael said. "I succeeded because of moments like you sitting next to me when I felt like quitting." The man's eyes filled instantly. "I thought I failed," he whispered. Michael shook his head. "No," he said firmly, "you survived. Failure isn't falling behind. It's believing you don't matter anymore." The man broke down, not loudly, not dramatically, just quiet tears, the kind that come from holding everything in for too long. "I watched you win everything," he said, "and I kept thinking maybe I was just the warm-up act in your life." That sentence hit Michael harder than any criticism ever had. He placed a hand on the man's shoulder. "You were never a chapter I moved past," he said. "You were the foundation." The man wiped his face, embarrassed. "I didn't want to be a burden." Michael straightened. "Listen to me," he said. "Burden is when someone takes without caring. You cared when I had nothing." The room fell silent again, but this silence was sacred. Healing silence, Michael stood and walked to the window. He looked outside calm streets, normal life. This is the part of success nobody talks about. He said, you gain everything, but you lose the people who knew you before it. The man nodded. I never blamed you, he said quickly. I knew your life got crazy. Michael turned around, but I blame myself, he said. The man looked surprised, for not checking, for assuming everyone would be okay just because I was. Success doesn't make you careless. It makes you unaware. Michael walked back and sat again. You didn't come here to beg, he said. You came here because you trusted me. The man nodded slowly. I just needed to know that I still mattered to someone. Michael didn't hesitate. You matter to me, he said. You always did. That was the moment the man's shoulders relaxed, the moment the weight lifted, the moment hope quietly returned. They talked for hours after that. About regret, about forgiveness, about the lies we tell ourselves when life doesn't go as planned. The man admitted something else. There were nights, he said, I thought about ending everything. Michael's chest tightened. But then I'd remember us, the man continued, and I'd think I can't let that kid down. Michael swallowed hard. That kid saved both of us. He said, sometimes the past isn't holding you back. It's keeping you alive. By the afternoon, the tone shifted, not heavy anymore, hopeful. Michael made a decision, quietly, without announcing it, without making it feel like charity. He picked up his phone. I'm making a call, he said. Not for you, with you. The man looked confused. Michael smiled. Life knocked you down, he said. Let's help it knock again. That moment wasn't dramatic. No big gestures, no speeches, just presence. Respect, brotherhood, the confession that could have broken everything, ended up rebuilding it, because sometimes the bravest thing someone can do is admit they need to be seen, and sometimes the greatest response isn't fixing everything. It's saying, you're not alone. This is where most stories end, but this one begins. Michael Jordan stood by the window long after the conversation faded into silence. Outside, life moved on like nothing had happened. Cars passed, people walked, the world stayed busy, but inside that house something rare was taking shape. Not sympathy, not charity. Responsibility. Michael turned slowly and looked at his childhood friend sitting at the table, shoulders slightly hunched, hands folded, waiting. Not expecting, not asking, just present. True dignity isn't asking for help, it's surviving without demanding it. Michael had seen this look before, not on courts, not in locker rooms, but in mirrors. The look of someone who's tired of fighting alone. Come with me, Michael said. The man looked up, confused. Where? You'll see. They walked into Michael's private office, clean, organized, purposeful. A room where decisions were made not for games, but for life. Michael gestured to a chair. Sit. The man did. Michael didn't sit. He paced, slowly, carefully, because what he was about to do wasn't impulse. It was intention. Great reactions aren't loud, they're deliberate. Michael stopped pacing and leaned against the desk. I want to be clear about something, he said calmly. I'm not doing this because I feel sorry for you. The man stiffened slightly. I didn't think, Michael raised a hand. I'm doing this because I owe you, he said. The room went quiet. Owe me? The man asked. Yes. Michael replied without hesitation. You were there when nobody else was, when belief was all I had. The man shook his head. Man, I was just your friend. Michael nodded. And that's why it matters. Friendship doesn't ask for credit. That's what makes it priceless. Michael picked up his phone. The man watched, unsure, uncomfortable. I'm calling someone, Michael said, not to fix your life, to open a door. Michael stepped aside slightly and made the call. His tone was calm, professional, direct. I need you to meet someone, he said. Yes, today if possible. No, this isn't publicity. Yes, I trust him. He ended the call and put the phone down. The man blinked. What was that? Michael smiled slightly. That was me reminding the world that second chances exist. Real power doesn't show off. It shows up. Michael walked to a cabinet and pulled out a folder. Inside were papers, not contracts, not sponsorships, plans, options, paths forward. I don't want you to feel like this is a handout, Michael said. So we're doing this the right way? The man swallowed. Mike, I don't want to be a project. Michael finished. I know. He slid the folder across the desk. This isn't charity, Michael said firmly. This is structure. Inside were steps, a place to stay stable, quiet, dignified, medical checkups overdue, necessary, a job opportunity earned, not gifted, not a spotlight, a foundation. The man stared at the papers, overwhelmed. You thought about all this already, Michael nodded, because I know what it's like to feel lost. He said, the difference is I had people to catch me. The man's hands trembled. I don't even know what to say. Michael smiled. Say yes. Sometimes the hardest word to say is the one that accepts help. The man nodded slowly. Yes, he whispered. Michael exhaled like he'd been holding something in for years. Good, he said. Because this is just the start. They didn't celebrate, no hugs, no speeches, just a quiet understanding. Michael wasn't rescuing him, he was walking beside him. Later that day, Michael drove him himself. No driver, no entourage, just two men in a car, windows down, music low. The man glanced over. You didn't have to do all this, he said softly. Michael kept his eyes on the road. I know, he replied. I wanted to. Choice gives kindness its meaning. They arrived at a small, clean apartment. Nothing flashy, but safe, respectful, temporary. Michael said, until you're ready for the next step. The man stepped inside slowly. He looked around like someone afraid the moment might disappear. This is more than I expected. Michael nodded. Expect more from life. He said, you're allowed to. The next few days moved quietly. Doctor visits, paperwork, long talks over coffee. Michael didn't hover, he didn't control, he checked in, like a brother would. One evening, as they sat outside watching the sun go down, the man finally spoke. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why me? He asked. You help a lot of people. Why did this one matter? Michael thought for a long moment. Because when I was nobody, he said, you treated me like I was somebody. The man looked away, emotional. The past doesn't ask for repayment. It waits for recognition. Michael never told the media, never shared the story, never allowed it to become a headline, because for him, this wasn't about image. It was about integrity. Weeks later, the man started working again, slowly, with confidence returning, with purpose rebuilding. One night he called Michael. I had my first good day in years, he said. Michael smiled on the other end of the line. Get used to that feeling, he replied. That reaction, calm, intentional, human, was priceless. Not because of the money, not because of the help, but because Michael Jordan didn't see a failure, he saw a brother. Greatness isn't lifting people up in public. It's refusing to let them fall in private. And that's the moment that defines who Michael Jordan really is. Not the championships, not the trophies, but the decision to open a door and keep it open. This is the part you never saw, and that's exactly the point. If this story had followed the usual script, this is where the cameras would appear. A press release, a headline, a viral moment, but none of that happened. Because Michael Jordan didn't want it to. In the days that followed, life continued quietly. No interviews, no social media posts, no charity announcements, no photos staged for applause. Just consistency, just care, just presence. Some of the greatest acts in life happen where no one is watching. Michael checked in regularly, not like a supervisor, but like family. How was today? You eat, need anything? Simple questions. Powerful answers, because for someone who had spent years feeling unseen, being asked mattered more than being helped. The man began rebuilding, not all at once, not perfectly, but steadily. And Michael made sure one thing stayed clear from the start. This isn't about me, he said, and it's not about what I've done. The man nodded. It's about what you're becoming. Real help doesn't remind you of your past. It prepares you for your future. Michael never visited in public places, never showed up where attention followed. When they met, it was quiet cafes, early mornings, late evenings, moments that belonged to them, because healing doesn't like noise. It needs space, One afternoon, the man finally asked the question he had been holding in. "Why didn't you ever talk about us?" he asked gently. "All the interviews, all the documentaries." Michael smiled faintly. "Because the world didn't need to know," he replied, "and some things lose their meaning when you explain them." The man thought about that. "People would love this story," he said. Michael shook his head. "No," he said, "they'd love the idea of it. That's different. Applause changes intention. Silence protects it." Michael had spent his entire life being watched. Every move analyzed, every decision judged, every emotion questioned. This was one part of his life he refused to turn into content, because this wasn't about legacy, it was about loyalty. Weeks passed. Then months. The man's health improved, his posture changed, his voice steadied. Confidence returned slowly, carefully. One evening, after a long day at work, the man sat alone in his apartment and realized something. For the first time in years, he wasn't afraid of tomorrow. He called Michael. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. Michael paused. "By living well," he replied. "That's enough. The best repayment isn't gratitude, it's growth." Michael never checked progress like a boss. He listened like a brother. When the man struggled, Michael didn't lecture. He reminded, "You've been through worse," he'd say, "and you're still here." Sometimes they didn't talk for days. And that was okay, because trust doesn't panic, it waits. One night, while watching an old game replay on TV, the man noticed something he never had before. Michael wasn't smiling during the highlights. He was watching quietly, thoughtfully. "What are you thinking about?" the man asked. Michael shrugged. "How strange it is," he said, "that people cheer for moments, but miss the meaning." The man nodded. "They cheer the shot," he said, "but not the work." Michael smiled. "Exactly. Fame celebrates results. Character lives in the process." The man eventually asked something else, something deeper. "Do you ever regret not slowing down, not looking back sooner?" Michael thought long and hard. "I regret moments," he said, "not the journey." The man understood, because life doesn't move backward. It only offers chances to reconnect. Michael had taken his, and he took it quietly, without witnesses, without proof, which is why it mattered so much. At no point did Michael remind the man who he was. He didn't use his name to intimidate or impress. When people asked, "How do you know him?" Michael would simply say, "We go way back." Nothing more, nothing less. True power doesn't introduce itself. It lets others discover it. One afternoon, the man overheard two coworkers talking about Michael Jordan. The championships, the shoes, the legend. They asked him, "You ever meet him?" The man smiled. "Yeah," he said, "he's just a regular guy." They laughed. He didn't explain. He didn't need to, because some truths don't need agreement. They need respect. The man later told Michael about it. Michael laughed. "That's the best compliment I've ever gotten," he said. As time passed, something unexpected happened. The man stopped defining himself by what he lost. He started defining himself by what he was building. Purpose returned, not borrowed, earned, and Michael watched quietly, proud. One evening, sitting on a porch as the sun dipped below the horizon, the man finally said, "You know, if you had turned me away that night, I don't know where I'd be." Michael looked at him seriously. "But I didn't," he said, "and you knocked anyway." Redemption requires two things: courage to ask and courage to answer. Michael never shared this story publicly, but it changed him, it grounded him. It reminded him that greatness doesn't live in banners, it lives in choices, small ones, private ones, permanent ones, because at the end of the day, when the lights turn off and the noise fades, you are left with who you helped and how you helped them. And for Michael Jordan, this chapter didn't need applause. It didn't need proof. It didn't need validation, because the man who once felt invisible now felt seen, and that was enough. This is where the story turns inward. Because legacy isn't what people shout about, it's what remains when the shouting stops. When people say Michael Jordan, the world thinks of numbers: 6 championships, 5 MVP, game-winning shots frozen in time, highlight reels, stat sheets, debates that never end, but none of that tells the full story. Statistics remember performance, Legacy remembers impact. Michael Jordan knew this better than anyone. He had lived inside the noise for decades, the pressure to win, the hunger to dominate, the obsession with perfection. The world saw confidence. What they didn't see was cost, the relationships sacrificed, the moments missed, the people left behind by momentum. Success demands speed, and speed doesn't look back often. That night, the knock at the door changed something in Michael, not his public image. His private understanding. For the first time in years, he wasn't measured by what he achieved, but by who he remained loyal to. Winning proves skill, loyalty proves character. Michael began thinking differently after that reunion. Not dramatically, not publicly, internally. He reflected on the people who helped shape him before fame took over, the coaches who pushed him, the parents who supported him, the friends who believed when belief felt foolish. He realized something uncomfortable. Many of those people never asked for anything, and many of them were forgotten, not intentionally, but quietly, because success doesn't erase memory, it replaces it with urgency. Michael Jordan had mastered urgency. Now he was learning reflection. One evening, sitting alone, he looked at his trophies again. Same shine, same weight, but different meaning. These trophies represented dominance, but they didn't represent connection. Achievement fills rooms, connection fills lives. The world calls Michael Jordan a competitor, but the people closest to him know something else. He's deeply loyal. And loyalty, when delayed, becomes regret. This reunion didn't rewrite his past, but it reshaped how he understood it. He began asking himself questions he'd never asked before. Who was I before the world told me who I was? Who stood beside me when there was nothing to gain? Who paid a price for my success without receiving credit? Those questions don't have easy answers, but they have honest ones. Michael realized his greatest victories weren't televised. They were quiet moments of trust, moments when he chose humanity over image, when he chose responsibility over comfort. Legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's what you return to. The story of his childhood friend became a mirror. Not a reminder of guilt, but of grounding. That friend didn't represent failure. He represented origin, the starting line, the truth that greatness doesn't grow alone. Every champion stands on unseen shoulders. And Michael Jordan finally acknowledged his, not with words, with action. That's what made it real. That's what made it legacy. People often ask, what separates Michael Jordan from everyone else? They talk about mindset, work ethic, mental toughness. Those are real, but incomplete. What truly separates him is accountability, not to the world, to himself. Greatness demands excellence. Integrity demands responsibility. Michael didn't owe his friend anything on paper. No contracts, no promises signed, but life isn't built on paper. It's built on moments, and Michael honored one that mattered. This wasn't about fixing someone else's life. It was about acknowledging shared history, about saying, you mattered then, you matter now. That message carries more weight than money ever could. It restores dignity. It rebuilds identity. It redefines success. As months passed, Michael noticed a shift in himself. He listened more, judged less, paused longer, because reconnecting with his past softened something inside him. Not weakness, wisdom. Wisdom isn't gained by winning. It's gained by understanding what winning cost. The world will always debate who the greatest athlete is. That debate will never end. But greatness off the court isn't measured by rings. It's measured by responsibility. Responsibility to remember, responsibility to care, responsibility to act when silence would be easier. Michael Jordan passed that test, not in public, but in private, and that's the highest level. His childhood friend once said something that stayed with him. You didn't save me with money, you saved me by reminding me who I was. Michael understood that deeply, because identity is fragile, and when life breaks it, recovery doesn't come from opportunity alone. It comes from recognition. People don't collapse from failure, they collapse from invisibility. Michael didn't let that happen, not again. That's the real legacy, not domination, not perfection, but remembrance. Remembering who helped you rise. Remembering who stood beside you before applause existed. Remembering that success doesn't cancel responsibility, it increases it. Michael Jordan's name will live forever in sports. But this moment, this quiet choice, is what defines the man. When the lights fade, when the noise disappears, when all that's left is character, because in the end, trophies gather dust, but people remember how you made them feel. And one man once forgotten will remember Michael Jordan not as a legend, but as a brother who came back. Stop. Don't click away yet. This part is for you, because this story was never just about Michael Jordan. It was about you, about the people you once walked beside, about the promises you made without realizing it, about the moments life pulled you forward so fast that you forgot to look back. Every legend has a story, but every story has a lesson. Michael Jordan's childhood friend didn't show up at his door by accident. That knock represented something bigger. It was the past asking to be acknowledged. It was loyalty asking to be remembered. It was life asking a simple question: when success finds you, who do you bring with you? Think about it. We all start somewhere, with people who believe in us before belief makes sense, with friends who sit beside us when we fail, with voices that say, keep going, when quitting feels easier. But as life moves forward, we get busy, we get focused, we get distracted, and without meaning to, we leave people behind. You don't forget people overnight. You forget them one day at a time. Michael Jordan didn't ignore his past out of arrogance. He lost track of it out of momentum, and that's something we all understand, because success doesn't come gently. It demands everything: your time, your energy, your attention, and slowly, quietly, it changes your world until one day, there's a knock. Sometimes it's literal, sometimes it's a memory, sometimes it's guilt, sometimes it's regret, but it always sounds the same, a reminder. Life always circles back. The question is, will you answer? Michael Jordan answered, not with excuses, not with distance, not with silence, but with presence. And that's the lesson. You don't have to be rich to show up. You don't have to be famous to care. You don't have to fix everything to make a difference. Sometimes, opening the door is enough. This story isn't telling you to save someone. It's asking you to see someone, to remember the people who mattered before the world told you who mattered. Because greatness isn't measured by how far you go alone. It's measured by how human you remain along the way. Success changes your address. Character decides who's still welcome. Look around your life. Who stood by you when you were nothing? Who believed when belief was risky? Who celebrated your first small win before anyone else cared? And now ask yourself something harder. Where are they now? Not everyone needs help, but everyone needs acknowledgement. A call, a message, a visit, a door opened. Those small actions carry weight, because time doesn't just pass, it separates, and reconnection requires courage from both sides. Michael's friend had the courage to knock. Michael had the courage to answer. That's why this story matters. Redemption begins when pride steps aside. For some of you watching this, you're Michael. You've moved ahead in life. You've achieved things. You've grown, and someone from your past is waiting quietly, hoping you still remember. For others, you're the friend. You've struggled. You've fallen behind. You've wondered if you still matter to anyone. This story is for both of you, because dignity exists on both sides of the door. One side requires humility, the other requires courage, and both require heart. Michael Jordan's legacy will always be debated. But this moment, this choice doesn't need debate. It speaks for itself. He didn't act like a legend. He acted like a human being, and that's what made it legendary. The loudest greatness makes noise. The deepest greatness makes space. So here's the question you should sit with after this video ends. If someone from your past knocked on your door tonight, would you open it? Not physically, emotionally. Would you listen? Would you care? Would you remember who you were before life hardened you? Because one day, whether you're ready or not, life will ask. And how you answer will matter more than anything you've achieved. Michael Jordan answered with loyalty, with humility, with action, and that's why this story stays with us, not because it's dramatic, but because it's true. Legends are remembered for winning, humans are remembered for caring. If this story touched you even a little, don't ignore that feeling. It's trying to tell you something. Reach out, reconnect. Remember, because success fades, but relationships shape who you become. And in the end, when the lights go out, when the noise fades, when titles mean nothing, the only thing that remains is how you treated people when you didn't have to. That's the real GOAT story.